Have you ever wondered why two people can start from almost the same point in life, yet one of them rises to extraordinary heights, while the other seems stuck in the same place year after year, and not always about talent, luck, or even opportunity? The hidden force behind every breakthrough, behind every story of transformation, is something far simpler, but far more powerful: the standards we hold for ourselves. You see, most people don't get what they want in life, they get what they are willing to tolerate. If your standard is to just get by, you will find ways to survive, but never to thrive. If your standard is to accept unhealthy habits, toxic relationships, or a career that drains you, then that is exactly the life you will keep living. But the moment you raise your standards, the moment you decide you will no longer accept less than you deserve, your entire life begins to shift. Think about it. The difference between I want to be healthy and I refuse to live in a body that feels weak and tired is enormous. The first is a wish, a nice idea you might pursue if it's inconvenient. The second is a non-negotiable decision that drives action. And that's in the secret. Raising your standards is about turning wishes into must. It's not about drawing a line in the sand and saying, "This is who I am now. This is the life I demand for myself." In this audiobook, we're going to explore what it truly means to raise your standards, why it's the single most important step to creating lasting change, and how you can begin applying it in your own life. First, starting today, you will hear the stories of people who refuse to accept mediocrity, who turn impossible dreams into reality simply by setting higher standards for themselves. And by the time we are done, you will realize that the power to change your future has been in your hands all along. So if you're ready to stop settling, if you're ready to leave behind the excuses and the limitations, and if you're ready to raise your standards once and for all, then let's begin this journey together. Because your next level of life isn't waiting for more talent or more luck, it's waiting for you to decide that you will no longer settle for less than the life you're truly capable of living. Part 1. Understanding personal standards. When we talk about raising your standards, the first question is simple. What exactly are standards? Standards are not goals. They are not dreams or hopes or vague desires. Standards are the minimum level of life you are willing to accept. They are the invisible rules you set for yourself every single day. They dictate how you treat your body, how you spend your time, the quality of relationships you allow into your life, and the results you are willing to settle for. Most people confuse standards with goals. A goal is something you would like to achieve. A standard is something you refuse to live without. For example, someone might say, "I want to be financially free." That's a goal. Another person might say, "I will not live in debt ever again." That's a standard. One is a hope, the other is a commitment. Think about your own life. There are things you used to tolerate that you no longer do today. Maybe years ago you accepted staying out of shape, eating whatever was convenient, or spending time with people who drained your energy. But at some point, something inside you shifted. You said, "Enough, I can't keep living like this." That was you raising your standards, even if you didn't call it that at the time. And that shift is why your life improved in that area. Let me give you an example. Imagine two students. Both say they want to get good grades. The first one studies only when they feel like it, turns in assignments late, and hopes things will work out. Their goal is to succeed, but their standard is average effort. The second student says, "I refuse to turn in anything late. I will not accept less than an A." That student stays up later, seeks extra help, studies when they don't feel like it, and pushes through the difference. The second student, then standard drives their behavior, not their feelings. This principle does just apply to school. It applies to every area of life. If your standard for health is "I will exercise when it's inconvenient," you want to get far. But if your standard is "I move my body every single day, no matter what," you would find the time and energy. If your standard for relationships is "I will take what I can get," you will attract people who don't value you. But if your standard is "I will only give my time and love to people who respect me," your entire circle changes. And here ends the truth. We always live up or down, the standards we set for ourselves. Your life today is the sum of the standards you've been willing to accept in the past. If you want a different future, you have to demand more from yourself right now. So before we go any further, pause for a moment and ask yourself, what are my current standards? What am I tolerating that I know deep down I should? What line have I failed to draw? Because raising your standards begins with clarity, with knowing exactly where you've been settling for less than you deserve. Part 2. Why raise your standards? Why should you raise your standards? Why does it matter so much? The answer is simple: because your standards shape your destiny. Every choice you make, every action you take is filtered through the lens of what you believe is acceptable for you. If your standards are low, your results will always match them. If your standards are high, your results will eventually rise to meet them. Most people live far beneath their potential, not because they lack ability, but because they have accepted mediocrity as normal. They be made peace with less health, less wealth, less happiness. Wow, than they are truly capable of. Think about it. If your standard is, I just need enough money to get by, you would always find yourself scraping by. If your standard is, I will never stop until I achieve financial independence, then even when setbacks come, you will find new ways forward. Your standard becomes the engine that drives persistence. There a powerful tool here. You don't want to get in life what you want, yeah, get what you willing to tolerate. Everyone wants success, everyone wants happiness, but what separates those who create an extraordinary life from those who don't is the refusal to accept anything less. The winners of life are not necessarily the most gifted, the luckiest, or the most connected. They're the ones who raise the bar for themselves and then hold themselves to it, no matter how uncomfortable it gets. Let you look at two types of people. The first is the person who accepts good enough. They settle for a job they dislike because it pays the bills. They stay in relationships that drain them because they're afraid of being alone. They make excuses for their health, telling themselves they're too busy or too tired. Over time, this person shrinks. Their life becomes smaller and smaller because their standards are low. Now look at the second type of person. They decide, I refuse to waste my life in a career that kills my spirit. They say, I will not stay in relationships that diminish me. They declare, I will not accept a body that limits me. These people don't have easier lives. They have higher standards. And because of that, they find ways to change. They take risks. They learn skills. They push past fear. Their standards demand growth, and growth creates transformation. You see, raising your standards forces you to evolve. It pulls you out of your comfort zone and into your potential. It does to let you stay the same. When you set a higher standard, you naturally begin to adopt new habits, seek new knowledge, and surround yourself with people who push you forward. That's the end. Why it matters. Consider this. If your standard is to walk every day, you've found a way even on the busiest schedule. If your standard is to save and invest 20% of your income, you won't figure out how to live on the rest. If your standard is to speak kindly to the people you love, then even in anger you would catch yourself, because kindness is your baseline. Standards become the guardrails of your life. They keep you aligned with the future you want. So why raise your standards? Because the quality of your life depends on it. Because the difference between where you are now and where you want to be is not luck. It's not talent. In the standards you choose to enforce. Raise them, and your life rises with them. Keep them low, and you stay stuck exactly where you are. As we continue, we will look at real-world examples of people who changed everything by raising their standards. Their stories will show you what's impossible when you stop settling and start demanding more of yourself. And more importantly, you can see how you can do the same. Part 3. Inspirational case studies. When we talk about raising your standards, it can sound abstract, an idea that makes sense in theory but feels distant in practice. That's why real stories matter. They show us how ordinary people who refuse to settle became extraordinary. They remind us that greatness isn't to reserve for the lucky few. Available to anyone willing to demand more from themselves. Let's look at a few lies that prove this truth. Take Michael Jordan, widely considered the greatest basketball player of all time. Jordan wasn't simply born with unmatched talent. In fact, in high school, he was cut from his varsity basketball team. Most kids would have given up embarrassed and discouraged. But Jordan raised his standard. He decided that being average was no longer acceptable. He trained harder than anyone else, often arriving at the gym before sunrise and staying long after others had gone home. His standard wasn't just to play basketball. It was to dominate, to be relentless, to never accept less than the best version of himself on the court. That standard pushed him to 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, and a legacy that will live forever. His story is proof. When you raise his standard, your entire identity changes, and so do your results. Now think about Oprah Winfrey. She was born into poverty in rural Mississippi, endured abuse and unimaginable hardship in her childhood, and faced barriers at every stage of her career. But Oprah raised her standards for what she would accept in life. She refused to be defined by her past. She refused to settle for being just another TV host. Her standard was to use her voice to inspire millions, to connect deeply with people, and to create meaningful impact. That standard transformed her into not only a household name, but one of the most influential women in the world. Oprah journey shows us that when you elevate your expectations of yourself, no circumstance, no matter how harsh, can hold you back. Then therein J.K. Rowling. Before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon, Rowling was a single mother living on welfare, struggling to make ends meet. She could have accepted that reality. She could have said, "This is just my life now," but she did. Her standard was to bring her story to life, no matter the rejection, no matter the odds. She wrote in cafes, on scraps of paper, often with her baby sleeping beside her. When publishers rejected her manuscript over and over, she began to quit. She refused to accept defeat as her destiny. And because she held to that standard, she eventually published a series that would inspire generations and make her one of the most successful authors in history. Rowling's story proves that raising your standards is not about never failing, yet about never settling for failure as the final word. Another powerful example is Dwayne "Rock" Johnson. Long before he became the highest-paid actor in Hollywood, Johnson faced disappointment as a young man. His dream was to play professional football, but after injuries and setbacks, that dream collapsed. At one point, he had only $7 in his pocket. Most people would have given up, settled into an ordinary life, and made excuses. But Johnson refused to lower his standards. He decided that no matter what, he would outwork everyone, he would bring unmatched energy, and he would build a life far greater than the one he had lost. That standard fueled his rise in professional wrestling, then in acting, then in business. Today, The Rock is not just a star, he is a symbol of resilience, discipline, and the refusal to accept anything less than greatness. His story is a reminder that when one dream collapses, a higher standard can lead to an even bigger one. And let you not forget Serena Williams. From a young age, she and her sister Venus were trained on cracked public tennis courts in Compton, California, now far cry from the elite world of professional tennis. The odds were stacked against them. But Serena raised her standards higher than anyone expected. She refused to accept the limits placed on her because of her background, her gender, or her race. Her standard was excellence, in nothing less. Through relentless training, unmatched discipline, and unshakable belief, she became one of the greatest athletes of all time, with 23 Grand Slam singles titles and a legacy that inspires millions. Her story shows us that raising your standards isn't just about personal success. Seek and shatter barriers for others too. What unites all of these stories? Jordan, Oprah, Rowling, The Rock, Serena. Need not luck or perfect timing. It's the decision to stop accepting less. It's the decision to raise the bar higher than what society, circumstances, or even their own fears told them was possible. They each drew a line and said, "This is who I am now. This is what I demand from myself." And then they lived up to it, again and again, until the world had no choice but to recognize their greatness. Their lives serve as mirrors for ours, because if they could do it, starting from setbacks, rejections, and impossibilities, then so can we. The question is not whether you have the ability, the question is whether you will raise your standards high enough to demand more from yourself than you have before. Part 4. Practical steps to raise your standards. So now that you've seen what raising your standards looks like in the lives of extraordinary people, let's talk about you. How do you take this idea and actually apply it to your own life? Because it's one thing to hear inspiring stories. It's another to make real changes in the way you live. The truth is, raising your standards is not about making one dramatic decision and hoping everything shifts overnight. It's about a series of small deliberate steps that, taken together, transform who you are and what you are willing to accept from yourself and from life. The first step is this. Decide what you will no longer tolerate. Every transformation begins with a refusal. Think back to a time in your life when you hit a breaking point, when you said, "I can't keep doing this anymore." Maybe it was about your health, your finances, your relationships. That moment of frustration, that moment of saying enough was the spark of change. So ask yourself now, what am I tolerating that I know I should? Is it constant procrastination? Is it debt piling up? Is it staying up all night scrolling, even though I wake up exhausted? Be brutally honest, write it down. The first step to raising your standards is drawing a clear line in the sand and saying never again. The second step is to define your new standard in clear, specific terms. Vague intentions will not cut it. Saying, "I want to be healthier" is a wish. Saying, "I will exercise for at least 30 minutes every day," no matter what, is a standard. Saying, "I want to be better with money" is a dream. Saying, "I will save and invest 20% of every paycheck" is a standard. The difference is clarity and commitment. Your new standard has to be something measurable, something you can hold yourself accountable to every single day. Step 3. Change your environment to match your standards. This is crucial because no matter how strong your willpower is, you will always be influenced by the people and places around you. If your standard is to quit drinking but your weekends are spent with people who pressure you to drink, you are setting yourself up for failure. If your standard is to read more books, but your living room has nothing but a television and a phone charger, guess what you reach for? So design your environment to make your standards easier to live by. Surround yourself with people whose standards are higher than yours. Place reminders in your space that reinforce the identity you are building. Create friction for the old habits and remove friction for the new ones. Step 4. Build habits that reinforce your new standards. This is where most people slip. They try to raise their standards with willpower alone, and when their motivation fades, they fall back into old patterns. But habits make standards automatic. If your new standard is health, create the habit of meal prepping on Sundays. If your new standard is financial discipline, set up automatic transfers to savings. If your new standard is personal growth, build a nightly habit of reading or journaling. Habits are how standards become who you are, not just what you hope for. Step 5. Take full responsibility. This is non-negotiable. You cannot raise your standards if you keep blaming your boss, your parents, your partner, or the economy. You cannot raise your standards if you make excuses every time life gets difficult. Taking responsibility doesn't mean everything is your fault, but it does mean that everything is your responsibility. The moment you stop waiting for others to change and start owning your life completely, you become unstoppable. Step 6. Raise your standards incrementally. Herein a mistake people often make. They set the bar so high so fast that they can't sustain it. Then when they fall short, they give up completely. Don't do that. Instead, raise your standards one level at a time. If you currently work out once a week, don't set a standard of 7 days a week overnight. Raise it to 3. Once 3 becomes automatic, raise it again. If you're saving 5% of your income, raise it to 10. Then 15, then 20. This incremental approach builds momentum and prevents burnout. Step 7. Constantly review and upgrade your standards. Life is dynamic. What felt like a breakthrough standard 5 years ago may now be your baseline. That's good. Means you've grown. But don't stop there. Keep raising the bar. If your standard was to make enough to cover your bills, raise it to financial freedom. If your standard was to exercise a few times a week, raise it to competing in a race or pushing your limits. Never stop evolving because the moment you settle, you begin to shrink. Now, let me give you a simple exercise. Grab a notebook and draw 2 columns. At the top of the left column, write what I will no longer accept. At the top of the right column, write my new standard. In the left column, list 3 things you are done tolerating. Things that have been dragging you down. Things you know are beneath you. In the right column, rewrite them into clear, powerful standards. For example, left column, I will no longer tolerate being out of shape. Right column, I will exercise for 30 minutes every single day. Left column, I will no longer tolerate procrastination. Right column, I will work on my top priority for at least 1 focused hour every morning. This exercise creates clarity and clarity creates power. And remember this, raising your standards is not about perfection. You will slip, you will fall short some days. That's normal. The key is not to lower your standards when that happens. Instead, recommit. Remind yourself of the line you drew in the sand. Get back up over time as you stay committed. Your identity shifts. You no longer have to force yourself to live by higher standards. They become who you are. Think of it like a thermostat. If you set the thermostat in your house to 70 degrees and the temperature drops, the heat will kick in until it's back at 70. Your standards work the same way. If you set your life standard at excellence and you slip below, your system will push you back up. But if you set your standards low, then the moment life gets tough, you will fall and stay there. Raise your internal thermostat, and your life will naturally rise to meet it. The bottom line is this. Raising your standards is the ultimate act of self-respect. It by saying to yourself, I deserve more, I am capable of more, I will demand more. And when you live that way, when you refuse to settle for less, you unlock a level of energy, creativity, and power you didn't know you had. That's how lives are transformed, not by chance, not by luck, but by standards. Part 5. Common mistakes when raising your standards. Now, before you charge ahead with your new standards, let's just slow down for a moment and talk about the traps, the common mistakes people make when they try to raise the bar in their lives. Because herein, the truth, Easy to set a higher standard, but it's then just as easy to sabotage yourself if you don't understand the pitfalls. If you can spot these mistakes early, you will avoid the frustration that causes so many people to quit. The first mistake is treating standards like wishes. People say things like, from now on, I'm going to be disciplined, or I'm going to take my health seriously. But they never turn that intention into a concrete, measurable standard. They speak in vague terms and hope for change. But hope is not a strategy. A real standard is clear and specific. It is not I will try to exercise more. It is I will work out for 30 minutes every day. No exceptions. If your standard can't be measured, you want to live up to it. The second mistake is going too big too fast. It's natural to get excited when you first commit to change. You set a standard that sounds heroic. I would wake up at 4 a.m. every day, run 5 miles, write a book, and meditate for an hour. For a week, maybe 2, you push yourself hard, but soon the weight of unrealistic expectations crashes down, and you quit not because you're weak, but because you tried to climb a mountain in one leap instead of step by step. Sustainable standards are built gradually. Start small, build consistency, then raise the bar again. The third mistake is ignoring your environment. You can set the highest standards in the world, but if you stay in a toxic environment surrounded by people who none low standards, you will eventually fall back. It's like trying to stay sober in a bar or trying to eat healthy when your kitchen is stocked with junk food. Your environment has to support your new standards. Otherwise, you'll be swimming upstream against the current too strong to resist forever. The fourth mistake is letting emotions dictate commitment. You know what I mean? You set a standard when you are motivated, when you feel strong and inspired. But then life gets stressful. You're tired. You're discouraged. And suddenly you let yourself slide. Just this once, you tell yourself. But just this once becomes the crack in the wall, and soon the whole standard collapses. If your standards depend on how you feel in the moment, they aren't the really standards, they're preferences. A true standard is non-negotiable, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. And the fifth mistake, lowering your standards after failure. People slip up once and then say, well, maybe I was aiming too high. Maybe I should just accept where I am. But that's the exact opposite of what raising standards is about. You don't lower the bar because you missed it once. You recommit, you learn, you try again. Progress is never a straight line, and failure is part of the process. The only real failure is deciding that your highest standard is no longer worth the effort. So remember, don't keep your standards vague, don't set them unrealistically high too quickly, don't ignore your environment, don't let your emotions dictate your discipline, and never lower your standards after a setback. If you avoid these traps, you will stay on a path long enough to see the rewards of your new standards unfold in your life. Part 7. Call to action. We covered a lot together. You now understand what standards are, why they matter, how they shape your destiny, the mistakes to avoid, and the practical steps to raise them. But knowledge by itself changes nothing. Think about that. You could listen to this entire audiobook, feel inspired, nod your head in agreement, and tomorrow, nothing in your life would be different. Inspiration is temporary, but raising your standards, that is permanent if you choose to act on it. So here is my challenge to you. Make this the moment where you stop settling. Make this the moment you draw a line in the sand and say, from this day forward, I will never again accept less than what I know I'm capable of. Don't just think about it. Declare it. Write it down. Speak it out loud. Own it. Because nothing changes until you make a decision. Ask yourself right now, what are 3 things in your life you are no longer willing to tolerate? Be honest. Maybe it's in the way you've been treating your body. Maybe it's in your financial situation. Maybe it's in the excuses you've been making, or the toxic people you've been letting drain your energy. Whatever it is, write them down. This is your line in the sand. Then right next to them, write your new standards. Be specific. If you wrote, I will no longer tolerate poor health, then your new standard might be, I work out every day, I fuel my body with real food, and I respect my health. If you wrote, I will no longer tolerate financial chaos, your new standard might be, I live below my means, I save and invest, and I build wealth every month. If you wrote, I will no longer tolerate negative, toxic relationships, your new standard might be, I surround myself only with people who uplift me, challenge me, and bring out my best. This exercise may feel simple, but it is powerful because when you put it on paper, you are no longer just wishing, you're committing. And once you commit, your brain begins to look for ways to make those standards real. Now, understand this. It won't be easy. Raising your standards means breaking patterns that have felt comfortable, even if they be being destructive. It means holding yourself accountable when nobody is watching. It means pushing forward when excuses feel easier. But that's exactly why so few people do it, and why those who do stand out so clearly. Imagine your future. If you take this seriously, imagine your body a year from now. If you stop tolerating weakness and start demanding strength, imagine your finances a year from now if you stop tolerating debt and start demanding discipline. Imagine your relationships a year from now if you stop tolerating toxicity and start demanding respect and love. The difference between those futures and the one you're on right now is not luck, not talent, not fate, gene the standard you set today. And here is the most important thing. You are worth it. Raising your standards is not about punishment. It's not about being hard on yourself. It ain't about honoring yourself. It ain't about saying, I deserve a life that excites me. I deserve health. I deserve abundance. I deserve love. And I refuse to settle for anything less. That is not arrogance. That is self-respect. So as this audiobook comes to a close, I want you to make a promise to yourself. A real promise, not a vague wish. Choose one area of your life, just one, where you will raise your standards starting today. Don't overwhelm yourself with 10 changes. Just pick one. Maybe each on waking up an hour earlier to work on your goals. Maybe each in saying no to one unhealthy habit. Maybe each in saving your first $100 toward financial freedom. Whatever it is, commit to it fully, and once that becomes your new normal, raise the standard again. Because this is how extraordinary lives are built, not in one giant leap, but in a series of decisions to stop settling and start demanding more. Step by step, standard by standard, until one day you wake up and realize you are living a life that once felt impossible. So I will leave you with this. Don't wait, don't tell yourself someday. Someday is not a day of the week, someday never comes. Change happens when you decide that today is the day, right here, right now. This is your moment to raise your standards, to demand more, to create the life you know deep down you were meant to live. The only question left is, will you? Thanks for watching the video. If you found this content helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. BookSnack is your go-to place for short and enjoyable book summaries. Got a book you go like us to cover? Next, drop the title in the comments below. I will be reading all of them and picking the most requested ones. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video.